Hey, what's up? All right, so there's a pretty neat patch that just rolled out for Hi-Fi Rush, and I want to walk you through what it actually does, why it matters, and what it looks like under the hood in a way that doesn't feel like a dry press release. The headline is simple. The game's publishing and service operator have officially moved over to Krafton, and the update that accompanies that switch touches a few different systems in the game. What you'll notice first, if you pay attention to intros and logos, is that the Bethesda branding has been swapped out in favor of Krafton branding, which is mostly cosmetic on the surface, but signals who is now signing the checks and handling support, storefront assets, and future maintenance. Alongside that cosmetic facelift, the patch includes changes to the way the game ties into its online services. There's an explicit removal or replacement of certain platform middleware that previously routed through Bethesda's infrastructure, which explains why the patch was rolled out as a timed transition and why the company published a clear schedule for the in-game swap. The official notes make a point of saying that the core gameplay is unaffected, and the update is framed as an administrative and infrastructure change rather than a content update. So your levels, progression, DLC access, and so on are intended to remain untouched while the behind-the-scenes owner label gets updated. Beneath the surface, this kind of patch is more interesting than it first appears because swapping service operators requires careful handling of identifiers, store metadata, and any launch time checks the client does. That can show up as small launch time differences for some users, and it's why the patch rollout was scheduled at a specific time in KST, so that server redirects and any store page updates could land in a tightly controlled window. The in-game asset swap itself is surprisingly thorough. It isn't just a logo replacement, but also touches legal attribution text, credits metadata, and certain store-facing images that live inside the game's deployed assets. Patch notes reference that timeline explicitly and pointed to a December 4 rollout for those in-game changes, which is a clean signal that this was planned and coordinated rather than an emergency hotfix. There are also quieter, more technical items mentioned in the background that people in the community tend to pick up on. Mentions of removing a ledger/middleware component that tied to Bethesda's services, adjustments to backend endpoints, and a couple lines about stability tweaks that read like housekeeping for the transition. The official framing is reassuringly simple. No gameplay content removed, no paid content changes, just a publishing handoff and the maintenance that comes with it. But the implications ripple a bit further out. When a game's publisher changes, that's the organization that will now be issuing future patches, handling regional rating and distribution, and owning the storefront presence. All of which can affect how quickly future updates arrive and where the game appears for sale. From an archival and preservation perspective, replacing store assets and swapping service operators is a reminder that games are composed of public-facing branding and a layer of service glue that, if not managed carefully, can complicate long-term access. On the community side, modders and people who rely on the broader technical surface of the game will be parsing the specifics of what middleware was removed or replaced to understand if any of their tools need adjustments. And commentators have already noted that the transition appears to have been done with an eye toward preserving player entitlements and progression. The way the patch notes are written also reads as intentionally low drama. It's a straightforward announcement that the operator changed on November 14th, and that in-game elements reflecting that change would be updated in the set patch window, with a clear line that the gameplay itself is unchanged. Finally, it's worth acknowledging the soft side of these moves. A publisher handoff is always a mix of corporate housekeeping and community signaling, and the language in the official communication leans into continuity, emphasizing that players can expect the same content and access while making the necessary changes behind the curtains so the game's legal and store artifacts match the new publisher. Overall, the update is an administrative pivot made visible through aesthetics and backend routing rather than a gameplay rework, and it functions as both a practical switch in responsibility and a small cultural marker of who's stewarding the title going forward.